Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Tom welcoming you to another study in the Word. Thank you for joining me, guys. I'm going to set that up just a little bit different. Um, I'm going to do my fourth installment in what the Bible says the dangers of sexual sin. I know this is not going to be the most popular video nowadays because people just don't want to know that their lives are out of order from a lot of them, even Christians, because they're into sexual sins. And but I want to just go through the Bible. What I was doing is going through the Bible and just kind of finding all the scriptures relating to that. And I got up now to Exodus, and I want to talk about the Ten Commandments. Now, okay, let's go to Exodus chapter 20, and we'll begin there in our study, and we'll just continue to go through. Actually, I'm going to use the Classic Amplified Bible. I think it's Exodus chapter 20. And we will begin there. Let me get over there. And we come to the very familiar, I know everybody in America probably has heard of the Ten Commandments. Maybe you don't know what they are, whatever, but God gave Moses these wonderful Ten Commandments. And the Ten Commandments basically is what America laws were founded upon. The morality that's in these Ten Commandments. Now, these are the Ten Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. And a lot of Christians say, well, that's under the Old Covenant. It doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. It's the moral law. It's actually a little bit even more intense in the New Testament because Jesus says something like this where it says, thou shalt not commit adultery, as an example. We'll talk about that in a minute. Jesus said, look, if you even look at a woman to lust after, you've done that in your heart. So it wasn't a declining thing because of grace. It was actually a more intense thing, letting people know. The Bible says the law is a schoolmaster for us, leads us to Christ. We can't keep the law. We can't keep the commandments. We cannot do it. Human beings have broken, every one of them have broken the Ten Commandments, probably all of them, spiritually speaking, if not naturally speaking. So it's very important to study this. Now, in Exodus chapter 20, verse 1, then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me or beside me. So number one here, no other gods, okay? Now, in other countries, say in the Hindus, or maybe Buddhists or Muslims or whatever, many of these religions, sects, and cults have other gods that they worship. Okay, still today, they worship them. They have images of them, so on. This has gone on for years. In America, not as much. We don't have as much of that. Now it's starting to come. But what we have done in the church is we have developed gods, okay, spiritual things that take us away from loving God, serving God, obeying God. As an example, you can make an idol out of almost anything. You can make an idol out of money, pursuit of money. You can make an idol, you can be an idol worshiper by, listen to this, now this is going to make some of you angry, worshiping your family more than God, more than the Lord, and putting him second place and your family first. That's idolatry. And Jesus talks strictly about that in the New Testament. He said, if you love your father, mother, sister, brother, and all that more than me, then you're not worthy of me. That's a dangerous thing to do, and people do it all the time. Idol can be religion. I don't need to go to church because, I have my relationship with God and I just do it at home and I read my Bible and I watch some videos. That's idolatry. It's a religious mindset. It could be pornography, where you're actually sitting down and watching sexual acts that are portrayed, not really real in a lot of ways. It's all foolishness. But you are literally sitting at an altar of satanic power when you do that, and that will be a portal into your life of demonic spirits. Sports. I'm all for sports. I love sports. It's great. I like baseball. I like, I used to like football, not so much anymore, college football. But, sports, basketball, whatever it may be, volleyball, hockey, there's 1,000 different sports. But some people, the sport becomes more important than, did you listen to me? It becomes more important than uh, their service to God, their relationship with God, their church, so on. Now, I'm going to go through the Ten Commandments because not all of them are sexual sin, but you can see here that pornography is. And pornography has become a major idol worship, where you're actually worshiping at the throne of perversion, sexual lust. Some people have developed that to the point to where uh, every serial killer that I ever heard of or read about has been really involved in pornography. They started out that way, got into some weird pornography, some violent pornography, and it progressed to where they did weird stuff like that. And that's not the only thing. I mean, that you can. There's 1,000 people get into pedophilism, children abuse. I might get tracked on YouTube for using that term. I don't know why, but child abuse, child rape, and it's terrible. But many times, I don't know anybody that was involved in that. They didn't start out with lighter forms of pornography and moved up into it. So that's a that's a big deal. Another one is what I call youthful lust can become idolatry. Youthful lust would be things like sports. Instead of um, people that are young in the things of God still think those things are more important than getting into church and getting into the Word of God. So they'll miss services because of it. They'll travel. They get really excited and caught up in that. And really, some of that is dangerous. It's an idol worship. You're taken away from your spiritual life. And these are things that and they're hard to get rid of. I can remember one time years ago, I was living in LA. I was a Dodger fan, still am today. For those in Milwaukee, you have to love me anyway. But after we just had the playoffs. But the truth of the matter is that, listen now, I got to where I was literally taking away my time from God and prayer and watching the game or listening to the games every single night. I love to listen to the baseball games. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in balance. But the Lord spoke to me one day and said, "You got to drop that off. That's becoming an idol to you." And I said, "A what?" Well, yes, it's becoming an idol to you. It can be, and it can be very damaging to you. And I didn't really think in those terms. But then, so I dropped it off for about 3 months, and I didn't watch the sports. I just stopped watching it. And one day the Lord spoke to me and said, "Now you can go back and watch your games, but just watch how much you do it." That's another form of idolatry. Now here's another one: alcohol and drug use. When alcohol becomes your God, so to speak, that's an idol worship. The spirit of alcohol in my state of Wisconsin is absolutely prevalent. I say about 50% of the people are heavy drinkers or alcoholics. I kid you not, in Wisconsin. And then drug use can be another thing. Those two things can go together. That can be idol worship, where you're spending your time doing that and relying upon that instead of the Lord. And He doesn't like that. That can be very serious. Another thing is, again, I mentioned it, but family. I remember a story in the Bible. Do you ever remember that? Jesus was telling people to come. We're gonna get 70 of you and send you out. And somebody comes to him and said, "Lord, I'll follow you wherever you send me, wherever you go." And he says, "Good." He says, but the guy goes, "No, wait a second." He says, "I'm going to come and serve you, but I've got to go bury my father." And Jesus said, "Hey, don't do that. Let the dead bury the dead." Now, I'm not telling anybody to do that, okay? This was a case where that person's relationship with their family was a problem, okay? It's going to be a problem with them. It was a problem with them. It's going to be a problem if they came and served Jesus. That would really pull them back out. I have seen that over and over and over again. Marriages and family units. Don't go to that hot church. Go to the boring church. You know, our families went there forever. A religious uh, people, you know, who have a form of godliness but deny the power. They'll pull on you to stay away. That's idol worship. Religion can be one of the worst idol worship things. So we see that. So that's number one. Have no other gods before or beside me. Number one. Then it says in verse 4, you shall not make yourselves any graven image to worship it, or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Now, these two things kind of go together. Again, this is mostly overseas, but today, when we minister to somebody and they come to the Lord and they are literally going through deliverance, one of the first things I have to do is say, have you cleaned out your house? And we'll go into their house if they haven't, and we'll find all this stuff, certain types of music, certain types of statues, certain types of jewelry, certain types of this and that, furniture, goes on forever, that have been accursed somehow through the occult, cult objects and stuff, and will literally release these demonic powers. And this is why God did this. He said this. And this is a problem in America today. People have every time you look at a TV program where they go into a house, they're selling high-end homes. Have you ever noticed this? They almost all the time have Buddhas all over the place. That's because they claim to be Buddhists, and it comes to be Zen. Isn't that wonderful word, Zen? You know, and they practice yoga, which opens the door to the devil. And a lot of you don't want to hear that. But see, when I work in deliverance, that's the first thing I ask, because listen to this. Satanists have told me, I mean, ex-Satanists and really evil people that used to be very evil, now they're Christians, have told me this, that yoga is the number one thing in any occult practice they teach you. There's two things: meditation, which is not biblical meditation, it's New Age type of meditation, and yoga. Those two things, because they say it will open the person up to the spirit realm and other what they call gods or ascended masters. So it's very dangerous. So God doesn't want us to do that. The 5th verse says, you shall not bow down or serve them, for I am the Lord your God, as a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me. Truth of the matter is, you have to deal with that a lot in deliverance, because sometimes idol worship and stuff comes down the family line and in the blood of the people's bloodline and stuff, and you got to break all that. That's a real thing. Okay, the 6th verse says, but showing mercy and steadfast love to thousands of generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. That's the good news. Verse 7, you shall not use or repeat the name of the Lord your God in vain, that is lightly or frivolously, in false affirmations or profanity, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Now, this one here, I got a bone to pick. I see people doing it all the time. How many people have to use the F word? How many F words? And I know it's not taking the Lord's name in vain, but a profanity. How many F words do you need to have in a movie? I mean, some movies is every other word. It's just ridiculous. What is that? That's that blasphemous thing that people get used to using these words. I saw a girl today. She has become a Christian. She was an atheist and she was into witchcraft and stuff. Well, she was giving her testimony. She's still raw. She probably needs deliverance. I don't know who she is, but anyway, I was listening to this girl, and all of a sudden, boom, she let the F-bomb go, and then she goes, oh, sorry, frickin', instead of the F word. Well, people use God's name in vain. They use Jesus Christ as a cuss word. They do it all the time. They use God with a damn after it. That's a cuss word. But he's not just talking about that. He's talking about us swearing in God's name, or, saying, I tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. That's really not scriptural. God doesn't want us swearing oaths or any of that kind of stuff. It's really forbidden here. And that's what he's talking about. And we do things. We do some things that you wouldn't even think were wrong. We use God. We call him the man upstairs. We don't reverence him, and we bounce his name around all the time. One of the things I've seen in a lot of Christian circles is they put such an emphasis on certain names of God, and really we need to be putting an emphasis on Jesus. Now you may call him uh, Yeshua, excuse me. I don't care about that, but what I'm saying is they just it's this name and that name and the other name, and frivolously blowing them around like that. That's what he's talking about. Don't do that. God is holy. God is to be reverenced and respected above all things. So we got a problem like that in America, even in the church. Right? Verse 8, earnestly remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, withdraw from common employment and dedicated to God. Keep the Sabbath holy. Now, here is a controversial subject. Well, the Sabbath is on the Saturday. Well, the Sabbath is on the Sunday. And Jesus said this. He said, the Sabbath, the Sabbath was created for men. Okay, it's a day of rest. God rested the seventh day. Now, you can have church on Friday night. You can have church on Saturday. You can have church on Sunday. And arguing about that, the people who do that have a religious spirit, a weird spirit about them. And they get into this kind of thing. But we do need to keep the Sabbath holy. By that, I mean, I cannot do that on a Sunday. And let me tell you why. I'm working on Sunday. Okay? Sunday is not my Sabbath. Sunday is not my day of rest. I have a crew down there that works with me. And they work hard on Sundays. Sunday is not their Sabbath. So what I have to do is I have to take another day of rest. Okay, because I'm a preacher. So many people who work in churches are like that. I do on Sunday afternoons relax and rest. But you know what I'm saying. Now, but God is saying that we need to keep it holy. We need to separate it. We need to have that. We need to have that time we're in the Word. Church is a Sabbath for most people. It's dropping off all of your work and going to church and consecrating that time to the Lord as we in ministry minister to you. And you need that. Everybody needs that. Two things that are happening that really trouble me in a society today. Number one is people don't go to church, all right, like they used to. They should. And we're starting to get a revival. People are coming back to church. Good churches. Secondarily, though, it's interesting to me how much sports there is on Sunday. Okay, it never used to be like that. We have a lot of sports on Saturday. We got to have a lot of sports on Sunday. And here's the big one: Wednesday night Little League. You know, when I was a kid, no way they would do that. Wednesday nights were a sacred time for church. Sunday was a sacred time for church. They didn't have ball games, didn't have any of that kind of stuff till later on. And so that is a trick of the devil. I don't mind people having sports deal after church or whatever it is, but missing church because of that's not keeping the Sabbath holy. So it's important not to do that. All right, so we could say more things about that, but we'll just stop with that. Now, the 6 days, verse 9, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son, your daughter, your maid servants, domestic animals, and so on. Verse 11, for in the 6 days that God made the heavens and the earth and all that was in them, and he rested the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it and set it apart for a reason. Like I said, I have to do the seventh day a little different because I'm working on the Sabbath day, and it's sometimes exhausting. So there you go. The 11th verse. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth. Let's go on to the 12th verse. Regard, treat with honor, do obedience and courtesy your father and mother, that your days may be long and on the land and that the Lord gives you. All right. Verse 13, you shall not commit murder. Now, honoring your father and mother is an important aspect of that. It'll extend your life or it'll shorten your life. Then it goes on and he says, you shall not commit murder. Now, let me stop here. The Bible does not say thou shalt not kill. That's not what it says. It doesn't say that at all. There's times to kill. War somebody's trying to hurt your family, sometimes you'll have to kill somebody. There is justified killing, all right? But murder is something that is in your heart that you're doing, planning it. It's a defilement. You're doing it because of an evil intent. You're doing it to gain power, to kill somebody that's you want out of the way, whatever it may be, 1,000 different things. That's murder. And it's important to do the aspect. There are Christians that don't believe in, somebody should go to war. Well, that's up to them. I'm not going to, float their, they can do what they want with it. But that's not really what God is talking about when you're in a situation in war. You just look at the Old Testament. I mean, how many wars there was and how many mighty men of God served that way. I hate when people put that on soldiers, police officers and CIA people and FBI, because we're in a war and sometimes they have to kill somebody. I personally believe very strongly in the death sentence if somebody is vetted, like DNA and everything. I know that there's times where we are killing the wrong person, or, I don't think that's something that we do on purpose, but we got to do everything we can. But that does deter crime. We know that because when they switched it, all of a sudden crime, where they don't do that anymore, all of a sudden crime exploded. I'm for really rough prisons. I think prisoners should go to prison and suffer the consequences of their actions. By that, I mean no weights, no social time out there with each other, except for maybe very good rewards. I just really think that our prison system is way too lax. No cigarettes, no smoking, no gang banging, no gang affiliation. If you are known to affiliate in a gang in prison, your time should be extended. I know that's rough, but the only way you're going to stop a lot of this stuff is to follow the Bible, follow the commandments. So, thou shalt not kill does not mean, or thou shalt not murder does not mean thou shalt not kill. So, you need to know that, okay? Then it goes on and says that you shall not commit adultery. Now we're getting into the sexual sin. We had to bring up the 10 commandments. I don't want to just start with adultery, because there's other things involved in that, like the pornography. I said adultery. All right, that word adultery is a big word. And quite frankly, in the Bible, the word fornication, adultery, all that has various meanings. It's translated that one way, fornication, many times, but it can mean a lot. It can mean anything from pornography, sex outside of marriage, the marriage covenant, to sleeping with somebody else's wife, coveting somebody else's wife or husband, homosexuality, all that is listed in these terms. And so just think about it. How many marriages have been destroyed by that? How much money has been spent on lawyers and divorce proceedings? How has adultery helped the nation? How about the kids? We could go down a long list. It absolutely ruins families. It destroys families. Sexual sin is one of the most powerful, awesome, nasty things that we can partake of that will cause issues and problems in our life. I see it all the time. Young girls, as an example, go out, and because they don't, they just have a wrong attitude toward who they are, whatever, they don't know the Word of God, they fornicate, thinking that they need to do that to keep a boyfriend, whatever, and they get pregnant. And so I'm going to do the right thing, and they get married to some ding-dong that doesn't love God or whatever, and that creates a lot of problems, and people have issues in their marriage for years, and they can't serve God for years. You want to go to church, and the husband fights you. You want to go to church, and the woman fights you. It's crazy. So these type of sexual things cause nothing but problems. Premarital babies, and then abortion because of it sometimes. So there's like a stream of ungodliness that comes from things like adultery and fornication and all these things that he's going to talk about. not necessarily in the Ten Commandments, but where we're going to be talking about them because it's very clear in the Bible. So he says this. And next he says in verse 16, you shall not witness falsely against your neighbor. All right. This is a major problem, being a false witness. And in politics, oh my God, it's just like out of control. It's just crazy. Now, I don't even need to say anything about that because we've seen it right before our eyes, okay? Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your maid servants or maid servants, or ox or donkey or anything of your neighbor's. You shouldn't covet your neighbor's stuff, and you shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife or husband. Okay, that's inferred also, you know. And that happens a lot. You get, you know, how about this? Many, many affairs start with neighbors or people that you know in your friendship groups. Or, if I can use this term, when you go to secular employment, if you're a Christian, and there's a guy there that's nice to you and your husband's not being nice to you and he's quote unquote not meeting your needs, you know, he doesn't know how to emotionally meet your needs, and the next thing you know, you're in a soul tie with some guy or some woman at work, and the next thing you know, it moves into another state and then another state. I've seen this happen over and over. It's a terrible thing. Here's one. I had church out in Nevada, and there was a couple that served God. They were one of the leaders in the church. They were awesome people. They were people that you could count on, and all of us loved them in church. But this wife, for whatever reason, probably because she didn't feel her husband was meeting her needs that way, got on a chat room. And I always caution people not to go on chat rooms of any kind, you know, especially children, because a lot of that's, again, people that are looking for little children. So she got on there, and in this chat room, she met a guy, and they started chatting back and forth. He seemed like a nice guy and all that. And pretty soon, you know, there was this emotional attachment going on, so they decided to meet. Well, they met several times, and it was all at first platonic. It really didn't end up in any kind of sexual sin, but they kept meeting, and eventually it moved over from this attachment, soulish attachment, to a physical thing where they started sleeping. She started sleeping with him. Now, they're both married, okay? Both of these people are married that I'm talking about. The man was married. She was married. They had both had children. She had children. And so as she was having this affair with this man, he had a perverse spirit. And all of a sudden, he decided to bring his wife into the situation. And his wife said, okay. So there was a threesome going on. I don't mean to be too graphic here, but this is what happened. Now, this person's a born-again, spirit-filled Christian, using the gifts of the Spirit. I mean, somebody that loved God as far as we could see, served God as far as I could see, but she got in this threesome. You know, that couldn't happen if you're a Christian. It can if you don't watch it, you know, and stay away from stuff and stay in the Word and stay in prayer. It can happen to anybody. Stay in church fellowship. And anyway, she got this going on. And when she started having the affair with the woman, her idea and the other woman's ideas, well, they liked that better than they did the man. So they both left together and left the man sitting there. So they both left their husbands. They went together and became lesbian lovers. And I used to go to this, it wasn't a very large town, and everybody went to the same coffee shop. And I would go to the coffee shop, and if they saw me, they come holding hands or whatever, and they're shot, you know, doing their thing. They saw me, man, they turn around and run quick. They did not want me to confront them at all. And that's the type of thing that happens when you go too far. You start doing that kind of thing. So you don't want to be doing that. Now, these are things that we need to think about as far as sexual sin goes. I mean, wow, it can destroy lives. So I encourage all of you to really make a quality decision that you're not going to have that in your life. My wife and I have established some churches, many churches actually. And the first thing I do if I'm going to actually pastor a church myself is I get up in front of the people, I take some time, and I said, this is me and my wife. Some things we're not going to do. We don't counsel women alone. I don't do that. She don't counsel men alone. And I also say we have committed not to get into affairs, just so that, because the people need to know that now. We got too many preachers falling into sin. Have you noticed that? Yeah, all types. And so we in the church need to raise up a standard. And that's why God gave us the 10 Commandments. Wonderful. We love you. Until next time, God bless you.